Hello everyone. There has been a lot of discussions going on regarding AMD Ryzen and 10th gen Intel. I know most people don't want to listen to the 20 plus minute technical babble videos of it, so I will do my best to give you the shortest version possible. To make it as short as possible, I'm going to focus on the AMD Ryzen and not Intel, as it's very clear that AMD Ryzen is the better value of the two. You'll see why in just a minute. To show you that, we need to look at the current motherboard chart. Now, this is subject to change, of course, as it's noted down below, but for right now, what this chart is telling you is that AMD Ryzen 4000 series, which is also known as Zen 3, is coming out later in the year. That will be supported by X570 and B550 motherboards. The B550 motherboards aren't out yet, but X570 is. X570 and B550 will also be supporting the 3000 series processors, which is out right now. What it means is that if you were to go out and buy a X570 motherboard, which should be about $150, then you would have the ability to use a 3rd gen Ryzen right now and then move to a 4th gen Ryzen processor later on. That's an insane amount of value, because if you look at 10th gen Intel's side of things, well, really all Intel, they change motherboards every generation. It's a nightmare to get a new motherboard every single time. So what Ryzen is doing is saying, well, hey, if you happen to have this motherboard, you can use our processors to their full extent. That's a really cool thing to have. For that reason, I do think that, well, this and other reasons, that Ryzen is going to be more valuable than Intel. Because I can't look at 10th gen, let's go ahead and look at 9th gen versus 3rd gen Ryzen. This is an article from Tom's Hardware. This is the average FPS geo mean for gaming performance. You'll notice that the base Ryzen 5 3600X comes out slightly ahead of the 9600K. The Ryzen 5 3600 non-X is just slightly behind the i5 9600K. That's your mid-range for right now. Then if you look at the more, I guess you can say, high-end stuff, then you're looking at 3700X or 3800X. You'll notice that there's not really a big difference between the 3700X and 3800X. About maybe less than, what, 1 FPS difference. Yeah, so 3700X is more valuable. But if you compare the 3700X to the 9700K base, then you have a difference of roughly, what is that, 7? So it's somewhere under 7 FPS. A difference of 7 FPS is not a huge deal, all things considered, when you're talking about being within 100 plus FPS. Ryzen makes up for it in other areas too, so let's go ahead and look at that. This is the productivity performance, the multi-core Cinebench R20 benchmarks. You'll notice that the base 3600X is going to be much better than the i5 9600K. There's a pretty big gap between the two. The 9600K is all the way at the bottom, sort of. It's just slightly above the 9400F. Here's the 3600 all the way up there. Here's the 37 and 3800X. They're at the top of the charts. This is important to mention because of a subject about regarding RAM, and now we're going to go over that. So as you can see, AMD is really good at multitasking, and one of the things that you can take advantage of with that multitasking is the RAM configuration. Before we talk about this article, let's go ahead and discuss the whole RAM situation. Motherboards will list what RAM that they can tolerate. However, what the RAM toleration is for the motherboard is completely different from what is considered optimal for a platform, so in this case AM4. AM4's optimal RAM speed is a lot different than what the motherboards manufacturers put out. You'll even notice that here with the article name, 3000 CPUs get memory recommendations from ASRock. ASRock is one of the motherboard companies. There's a lot of technical babble here, but the thing that we need to look for is the quad channel RAM or memory configuration. The reason for that is quad channel memory, depending on where you read or other stuff, quad channel memory has on average 20 frames per second advantage over dual channel memory. What you're trying to do with AMD Ryzen is you're trying to utilize that multitasking capability and use the most optimal RAM for the configuration. You need to be using CL16 RAM, but the speed is going to be different. Well, CL16 are faster, but the RAM speed is going to be different. You'll notice right here it says things start to get complicated when you start filling all 4 memory slots. When all 4 memory slots are populated with single rank memory modules, the official memory speed drops to 2933. And if you use a combination of single and dual rank memory modules, your best is DDR4 2667 with a 4-DIMM configuration. That's what you have to do with a AMD Ryzen 3rd Gen platform. 4th Gen will likely be different, but for now, this is what you have to think about. One of the biggest mistakes that I see with custom PC builders and even reputable, well, quote-unquote reputable brand name companies is that they don't know any of this. To be fair, though, they are also more concerned with stockpiling rather than making sure that each build is specific to that person. What a lot of companies do, like Dell and maybe some of the others, they'll buy a lot of parts in bulk. What they're doing is they're trying to make PC builds available right then and there the second the customer orders. If they were to do a build specific to that person, then that means they're going to have to buy parts one at a time whenever the customer makes that order. When that happens, you're going to have delays between shipping, the merchants themselves, and a bunch of other factors. As we are seeing with COVID-19, that's the case. A lot of the top-rated parts for these systems are either sold out, take weeks to ship, or are going to just take 1 to 2 weeks to restock. Most people aren't going to wait 1 to 2 weeks, and that's the unfortunate thing. When you're buying a computer, you want to treat it like a tattoo, sort of. You want to ensure that you're being patient, you make sure you get the right parts, and that the system is optimized for what you're doing. I know that's a lot to ask, but that's what you gotta do. In a nutshell, though, or the conclusion, AMD Ryzen does make up for the difference in FPS by doing other things like the ability to multitask with the RAM, SSD, and a couple of other things. Intel is slowly falling behind because AMD is not only getting better with their processor manufacturing, but AMD is also keeping in mind the value aspect and that they are being smart in using currently existing motherboards rather than trying to make new ones like Intel is. So, yeah, that's basically all I have really to say on this, that AMD Ryzen right now is your most valuable gaming and streaming processor. Intel is just nowhere near that right now, and I highly doubt that's going to change with 10th gen due to the fact that you can just change processors if you absolutely feel a need to go well beyond 100 FPS in games. But yeah, I hope that helps.